Hello guys, welcome back to another video, and today, as you can see on screen, we are going to be talking about the topic that has been on a lot of people's minds the last few months, and that is the epidemic of cheaters, and more specifically, the hackers that are all over Cards. And this video is going to be a little bit different than the way I typically film videos. So typically I'm just sort of talking off the cuff. I'm just saying I have an idea of the points I want to get across, and I will sort of go off this one. I will go off on that. In this video, I'm just going to be sticking to a pre-written script, and that's just because I want my thoughts to be as organized as possible so that this can be a helpful video, as helpful as possible for players, as well as I don't want to spread any misinformation by misspeaking at all. So don't mind me sort of scanning down to read my script. This video itself, it's going to be split up into two different sections. The first section, I'm going to be covering the most common hacks, the most common exploits, what to look out for, how to identify if your opponent is using these against you, and how to report them. So this is going to be the most relevant thing to most people, and, you know, if you think you run into a cheater, you are more than welcome to come back to this video, specifically the start of this video, and then you will be able to see, okay, that this is the things to look for if I think they were cheating, and if I do think they were cheating, these are the resources on how to go and report that to 1939. So after that, after I will get through the sort of the most important part, and the part that's going to be the most relevant and helpful to people, I'm going to spend a little bit more time discussing some things surrounding the hacker issue and the exploits and other offenses and things like that that aren't necessarily going to be directly as helpful to people, but I think are still important to talk about, and at least, the very least, are interesting to me. So with that, let's roll the intro and get straight into the important stuff.
What a performance there by J-King.
J-King, full plot armor.
J-King is pushing himself into the ranks of the legend.
J-King is our world champion! J-King 7! What? The back-to-back Cards world champion!
Alright, so what are the cheats you should report? So, the most common cheat that you're most likely to run into is the instant win cheat. This one is fairly straightforward. It is when your opponent hits your HQ with any amount of damage, and you just instantly lose the game despite how high your health total is. And this is going to graphically appear in a few different ways, because sometimes your HQ will explode as if they dealt lethal damage, even if they shouldn't have been able to, and sometimes it doesn't. You just get the "you lost" screen, the defeat screen, but your HQ is still there behind the defeat screen, not destroyed, but you get the loss, you lose the points, you lose the tournament, whatever the mode you were in, you get the defeat. So sometimes they will do this on turn 1, and sometimes they will also play out the game a little bit, and then if it gets into a part that's a bit dicey, where maybe you're going to win soon, then they might kill you then. It really depends on how blatant your opponent is trying to cheat. But regardless, if at any point your HQ is destroyed, and you have no reason to think that you've been disconnected, that you're not desynced in any way, or that your opponent might have used some sort of combo. Obviously, there's a few different OTK, one-turn kill combos where the deck is designed around dealing lethal damage in a fair way, in a single turn. You can, if it's not any of that, then that is when you should report your opponent. And if you are unsure, of course, after you lose a game, or win a game, and you are on the end game screen, you can hit View Battlefield before clicking off and looking at your XP and Battle Pass and whatnot. If you click View Battlefield, it will allow you to see the turn history for the last 3 turns, and there you will be able to see, okay, does the math add up? Did they play cards that could have reasonably killed me, or, you know, did they hit me for 1 damage and then I died from 20 health? So the second most common cheat that I have seen, and this is a cheat that I think it seems to me, at least, that it's much more common at lower ranks, probably because it is the easiest cheat to get caught and banned for, and that is the infinite credits cheat. Essentially, you will get an infinite number of credits to use as soon as you want, so they will use it on turn 1 to play out their entire hand, and because they are using this cheat, they will typically build a deck around the fact that they are using this cheat, so they will typically just build a deck where they throw in all of the most expensive cards and all of the very expensive blitz cards, and then on turn 1, they're just slamming down a bunch of 9-cost bombers and attacking you in the face, and, you know, they might kill you on turn 1, they might not kill you on turn 1, but kill you on turn 2 or 3 with all of their big stuff, but the point is that they played out a ludicrous amount of stuff on turn 1, and in my experience, people using this cheat never really try to hide it, because it's very difficult to hide the fact that you are cheating out credits early in the game. Most people can do basic math. So if you do see this cheat, obviously that is one that you can report. And there are a few other cheats in this variety. An example of one would be setting your HQ to maximum as soon as the game starts, so you deal damage to your opponent and they go from 20 to 99 health. You know, if your opponent does that, they are cheating. However, cheating in these types of ways are a lot less common than just giving yourself infinite credits or dealing infinite damage in a single hit, because those are the ones that end the game very, very quickly, and if you are cheating, it's because you are trying to win the game very, very quickly without actually playing it, so you're probably not going to see the other stuff, but just be aware that it is possible, so if you do see it, then you're not, it's not a weird bug. They're probably cheating, and you should report that as well. So there is a second category of cheats that you should report, or I should say more exploits, and these are when people are using exploits to get around normal deck building restrictions. So this typically means playing classic cards in non-classic formats, so playing cards that have been rotated, cards that have been chosen to say, hey, you can't play this anymore in standard, and your opponent says, you know what, I want to cheat, so I'm going to be using those cards in a standard format where other people don't have access to those cards, and oftentimes that they're going to use this cheat in combination with other cheats. Sometimes they might just be using classic cards in non-classic format. The other thing that people have done is they might be using an exploit that allows them to play more copies of a card than you are allowed to put in your deck. Obviously, if you've been sort of plugged into the community lately, there's a big incident regarding this, about a week or two ago, at the point of recording, where people were created an exploited cheat deck that was 39 diplomatic attaches, which is a card that does 1 damage for every diplomatic attache you have played already this game. So if you can have 39 of them, and you are guaranteed to always have at least 4 in your opening hand, well, it turns out it is an incredibly good deck because it wins on turn 3 100% of the time, and it means that you don't actually have to install any sort of cheat hack client. You can just simply copy the deck code and use this. Now, this particular exploit has already been patched out. You cannot do that anymore. However, if you do see anybody using an exploited deck, a deck that is doing anything that they should not be able to do in any format, what you should do is you should report that player, and you should absolutely not copy the deck list and try to play it yourself. This is how you get banned. Don't do that. If you see somebody breaking the rules, don't break them too. Just report them, and they will get banned. Now, there is obviously a lot of room for potential error here when you are reporting people, so if you are unsure as to the rarity of a card or if a card is rotated or not, you can check in the cards collection after the game, or if you are in the game and you want to look this up because, the name of the card's still there or whatever, you can go to the cards collection website, and there you can type in the name of the card, or you can filter by rarity, you can filter by reserved or not reserved, etc., and that will give you any of the information you need to sort of see if your opponent is in fact cheating. And when you're trying to count how many cards your opponent's played, and you're like, hey, this is an elite, but they've already played this card once, there are a few ways to get additional copies of certain cards. So, if your opponent plays an elite unit and then they play a card that is choose one of 3 elite units, they can get a second copy of it. So just because you see 2 copies of a card in an otherwise normal game, they're probably not cheating. It's probably just a weird card interaction that you missed or are not aware of. But, if your opponent plays 6 diplomatic attaches by turn 3, they are 100% cheating. So, if you encounter any of these hacks or exploits, regardless of the format that you are playing in, and regardless of the outcome of the game, you should report them to 1939. I have experienced the weird situation where I have queued into a cheater, and they were clearly cheating, and then they surrendered the game. Doesn't matter, they still cheated. They're probably going to cheat against other people. They've probably cheated against other people already. Even if they surrender the game, still report them. Doesn't matter. So what does reporting them look like? Well, what you should do is you should go over to the Cards Support website. The link to the Cards Support website is going to be in the description of this video, as well as if you want to find it and you don't want to look up this video and you don't remember what it is, you can go over to the Cards main Discord and type !report, and that will immediately pop you up with the link to where to report them, as well as a short series of instructions on how to report them, and that's what I'm going to break down now. So here is the Cards Support website. So you come here and you type in your email address. This is going to be how 1939 communicates with you when they sort of tell you the verdict, so to say. Subject, here you should just type in something along the lines of cheating in draft. Doesn't really matter, but just something short and sweet that gets the point across. You don't have to be rude, you don't have to be crass, just make it very, very simple and professional. It will throw up a bunch of suggested articles, but you can ignore those, and you can come down and select category and scroll down to player conduct cheater report. So this is saying I want to report somebody for cheating, and then in the description, just type a very brief description of what happened that makes you think that they were cheating, as well as when it happened. And this is very important because you do not need to have your opponent's name. Now, it might help if you can type it out very easily. You might as well include that, but you don't have to have the opponent's name to be able to report them, and this is important because a lot of times people don't know how to type out their opponent's name if it's in different characters than they are typing in, or if it is using a bunch of different symbols that are intentionally difficult to be able to type up. That might happen, but 1939 can use their logs and look at your account and see who your account played against and find that the cheater relatively easily if you type in when the game happened, and then you go down to player name and type in your name and number. So there is a 4-digit number after your name in Cards, and this is how people add you. This is also going to be necessary just because sometimes people have there's multiple accounts under the same name, and the number is going to, differentiate your specific account. And with that information, 1939 can go in and find the game in question, look at if your opponent was cheating, and ban them if they are. Attachments, you can upload any screenshots that might sort of further support the fact that they are cheating. Again, this is not necessary if you're talking about somebody hacking, because it's going to be very, very clear from 1939's perspective once they go into the logs if in fact they are hacking. So, screenshots are not necessary. So again, you don't need to have your opponent's name written down. You don't need to have screenshots of the incident happening. You don't even need the exact time if you have an idea of the time that it happened. All you really need is your name and an idea and enough information that 1939 can find the specific game that you are referring to, and that's all you need for the report. So it's very, very easy to make a report. It only takes really less than a minute to sort of type out a report if you queue into a cheater. So again, it is very, very important that if you see somebody who is cheating, that you send in a report for that. And that's just because not only could it help you out if you are playing in a game mode like draft or a tournament, you might receive a refund for whatever resources you spend on entering that game mode where you then lost to a cheater, as well as it's going to help that cheater get banned faster, and that's going to stop other people from losing out in a similar opportunity as you. So again, if you ever see a cheater, do not be afraid to report them, and don't be worried if you feel like you don't have enough information. The worst case scenario, 1939, it doesn't do anything, and no harm, no foul. Now, I spoke to 1939. I didn't run the script by them word for word, but I gave them a gist of what I was going to be talking about in this video. I asked some questions just to confirm some things and ask if anything they wanted to say. So this is, 1939 confirmed to me that they have a zero tolerance policy towards hacking, and any player who is detected to be using any of the hacks, like the one-shot HQ hack or the infinite credits hack or anything else, they will be permanently banned with no exception. There are a lot of cheaters around on ladder, but anybody who is caught cheating will be permanently banned, and this is why reporting is so crucial, because if a single player reports a cheater, the 1939 will look into that and then immediately ban them if they were, actually cheating. So the account will be locked and then later deleted, and all progress on that account is lost. There is no way to transfer resources from one account to another. There is no way to sort of appeal it, earn a bunch of resources, and then get the account back later down the line. That does not happen. Anybody who cheats on their account, the account is lost forever. All of the resources they earned through cheating are lost forever. There is literally zero benefit to cheating. So again, if you yourself are considering like, hey, I'm a new player, I think it would be really nice to win iron tournaments, don't cheat. There is literally zero benefit of doing it. All that's going to happen is you are going to get caught, and you are going to lose all of the progress that you had made up to that point on that account, even if you had put in all countless hours playing the game fairly. If you cheat once, you are probably going to be permanently banned and lose everything else. So don't cheat. It is, pretty straightforward. I also want to touch on the fact that the accounts will be locked and later deleted. So sometimes people will cheat in a lot in a row, well, specifically while 1939 is asleep, and that might get them very high up on the leaderboards, so they appear on the leaderboards, and everyone says, hey, that person on the leaderboards is cheating. Well, what happens is that person certainly got reported dozens of times because they played dozens of games, and that person is going to be banned. However, their name might stay on the leaderboard for a couple of days before their account is permanently deleted. So just because there is a cheater on the leaderboard, if their their number isn't actually fluctuating, if their score isn't actually fluctuating, it probably means they were banned already. So, don't take that to mean, 1939 isn't doing anything about this obvious cheater. The answer is they probably already are doing stuff, it just hasn't, gotten 100% of the way through the system yet. So, yeah, you don't really have to worry about that. So, I can also say that player reports are looked into daily. So, it's not like once a week they look at any of the player reports. Your report will be looked at as soon as possible, as well as 1939 has automated systems in place to flag suspicious players or suspicious things happening in games. That will get them to look at it themselves without any player specifically reporting it. So, even if a player is not reported, there is still a very high chance that they will be caught and banned because 1939 has measures in place. Also, I can say that 1939 is been very outspoken that they are working on beefing up their systems that will make it harder to cheat in the first place, and that this should hopefully be coming out in the near future. But again, this isn't going to be just a single one and done, fix all of the problems magically. This is going to be a sort of continual process of making sure the game is more and more secure, so people can't do these exploits. So, yeah, we have that to look forward to. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, so to say, that, the cheating problem is only really going to get better from here as 1939 beefs up their systems to detect cheaters more quickly and stop a lot of these exploits from being really able to exist in the first place. And so that's all good news. Now, there was a lot of discussion surrounding the cheating epidemic, and this really is a cheating epidemic at this point. There is a ton of new cheaters every single day. There's tons of cheaters in every single format, and it is very much more cheaters now than there has ever been at any other point in Cards history, and honestly, probably more cheaters now than there has been at any other point in Cards history combined up until this point. So, yeah, there's really a lot going on. Multiple different cheaters have hit top ranks on the leaderboards before being removed multiple times, multiple days in a row. It also often feels like you can't really go a day without seeing a cheater in tournament mode. The Iron tournaments are only open twice a week, and it feels like every time you play in that twice a week window that it is open, you are probably going to run into at least one cheater in that 18-hour window. At least that's been my experience. But I want to make sure that all of the anger that this is entirely rightfully generating is directed in a sort of healthy and productive manner, as well as just towards the right people. Because really, the people you should be mad at are the people who are hacking. You can't say, the exploits exist, so we're going to use them. No, you are wasting your time to waste other people's time. You are absolutely terrible. You should be banned. What are you doing with your life if you are hacking in Cards? Actually, I don't get it. What are you doing? Now, that's not to say that you can't criticize 1939 for anything. I think it's entirely valid to criticize 1939 for the existence of these vulnerabilities in the system to begin with. So you can say, why are people able to one-shot HQs? Why is there something to all of it? Why is it not server-side in a way that prevents them from being able to do this in the first place? I think that's a fairly valid criticism. However, they are handling the current situation to the best of their abilities, as far as I can tell. So, saying why was this able to happen is not really productive in them fixing it, because they are doing their best to fix it, and they are doing their best to handle the current situation as it exists. Now, the reason there are so many cheaters at this point is not because they are being allowed to keep playing or anything like that. It's not like there's a few hundred cheaters who aren't being banned. There are cheaters being banned every single day. It's the fact that really right now Cards is at its most popular point that it's ever been, so there is a huge influx of new players coming to Cards, and there's a huge influx of new players joining the community, and a few of these new players who have been coming in, as well as a few of the players who might have been around for a while or sort of on the fringes of the community, are bad actors, and they are setting up communities of hackers dedicated to spreading these hacked clients, to refining these hacked clients, and everybody in these communities, they suck. That's sort of the issue, is they are very organized. This isn't just one person being like, hey, there's a very easy press this button to cheat button, is that they are getting organized, and because of that, it's able to spread much more easily. But again, if any of these people try to contact you, if you are aware of any of these groups, you should report it. You should not download anything that some cheater on the internet tells you to download, because, one, it's probably a virus, and two, if it's not a virus, it's still going to get your account banned immediately. But yeah, so the problem will eventually be solved. Again, like I said before, that this is the worst that it's going to get. 1939 is just going to continuously improve their anti-cheat measures, and there has been innovation from the cheaters, from the hackers, in that they are discovering new weird things, but most of them are all based on the same vulnerabilities that I imagine 1939 is working on patching out, or they are things that are just not going to be particularly useful in cheating and will be very easy to pick up with a automatic detection system. So in the meantime, just stay clear of hacks or exploits that you come upon, report everything that you see, and don't engage with any of this nonsense. So, with that all being said, I don't want people to think that they shouldn't play the game right now, because, you know, the game is pretty fun. I mean, the discussion of the meta is another thing, but I'm having a lot of fun playing the game right now. And although the rate of cheaters is at an all-time high, you can still go days without seeing them, especially depending on your rank. There's much less cheaters on ladder. There is even less cheaters in casual mode, as well as I'm sure rookie tournaments are probably have substantially less cheaters, because cheaters are going to be drawn to sort of the biggest prize pool events, the ones that you can just knock out people, you can play in a short period of time, and that's going to be draft mode, blitz tournaments, and most obviously of all, iron tournaments. So these game modes are definitely going to draw the most cheaters to them, but again, I've only seen 2 cheaters in a single day, and that was once. And, you know, even if you do see a cheater in an iron tournament, obviously that sucks. You spent 300 gold to enter into that tournament, but if you report a cheater, you are going to get refunded for anything you spent on entering that, regardless of your actual prizes. So if you pay 300 gold to enter an iron tournament, and then you get to the finals of the iron tournament, you lose to a cheater, you are going to get the prize for second place, and then you are still going to be refunded 300 gold on top of that because you lost to a cheater in an iron tournament. So, you know, you're still going to get stuff even if you see a cheater, and again, odds are the vast majority of the games of cards that you play right now are not going to be against cheaters, so don't let a handful of trolls ruin your enjoyment of the game. I'm not trying to fearmonger here, saying, like, everyone you're gonna queue into is a cheater and the game's unplayable right now. The game is absolutely playable. I don't want to overblow the situation at all. I just want to make sure that people know the correct thing to do when they do run into a cheater, because you are probably going to run into 1 or 2 of them if you play the game a decent amount of time. But again, very simple, just report them and you'll be refunded anything that you spent or anything that you lost due to them. So that is all of the important stuff out of the way. So that, again, is the most important stuff. Those are the cheats that you can very clearly see, you can very clearly report, and how to report them. However, I think there's a few other points that are worth discussing and just sort of hitting on for interest. So, first of all, who are these cheaters? So, this is fairly speculative. I don't know any of them personally, but I think that most of these cheaters are probably new players on new accounts. And so there has been some accounts that have used the names of famous players who have been around for a while, but this is not those players. They're just simply copying that player's username. I have never heard of any player with any amount of history in this game hacking in this manner. This is something done exclusively by, or as far as I'm aware, it's done exclusively by new players to the game who want to just skip at the early stages of the game. They want to skip, you know, needing to try out different strategies to learn the game in any meaningful way, and they instead just want to get immediately to one-shotting their opponent, and that's how you get banned. As an example, you might have seen the screenshot going around, and you might have seen it yourself, of the 2 66 better accounts actually right next to each other on ladder on the leaderboard. Now, one of those 66 better accounts, as far as I'm aware, is the actual 66 better, you know, tournament player 66 better, not hacking 66 better, and the other one was a hacker who was using that same username and, you know, hacking in all of their games to get that high up on ladder, and that one was banned. So there's a lot of stuff surrounding the names of cheaters. So a lot of cheaters create intentionally difficult to recreate names, like strings of capital I's and lowercase L's, so it's just a long list of straight lines. Others use invisible characters, so their name is literally blank, except for the number if you hover over where their name should be, or, you know, other stuff like that, using the names of famous people so that you think, oh, this is, you know, 66 better, this is J King 7, this is Red Sun, this is Bear Gardner, whoever it is, and, you know, they surely wouldn't be cheating. So they use all of this stuff, and none of this stops 1939 from banning them. It does not slow 1939 down at all, because 1939, their systems don't care about what your username is. They are looking at, are you cheating or not? The entire point of this is to make it more difficult for people to report them, but again, as I said in the section about how to report, this doesn't actually matter. You don't need to type down the username, and again, a lot of people will copy the names of famous people, so if you queue into a famous person, a username you recognize, and they are cheating, report them, and 1939 will still be able to go in. They can differentiate, hey, is this a new account or is this the original account? And also, maybe the original account is cheating, who knows? But the account will be banned. You don't have to worry about the wrong person being banned. You don't have to worry about any sort of repercussion for reporting anybody. It is perfectly fine as long as you are making reasonable, valid reports. And also, there is, as I mentioned before, there is sort of these organized groups of cheaters now. I've seen some of the people actually making their new accounts with their cheater group's organization name in the title, like as like a clan name type of thing. If anything, that just makes it easier for 1939 to detect them. It's just people being dumb. And again, if any of these groups do try to contact you, just ignore them and reach out to a moderator. Now, another point of interest that I think is something to talk about here regarding hacking in Cards is talking about the history of hacking in Cards. So as you might know, I have been playing this game for a fairly long time. It's actually now 6 years. I've passed my 6-year anniversary of playing Cards, and versions of the one-shot the HQ hack or the infinite credits on turn 1 hack have been around basically since as long as I've been playing. That being said, it's never been at the level that it is, and that's just because it's very, very obvious when you hack. And if you hack, you get banned immediately. And they're just, in the past, like, there were a handful of times that it would come up, and when it did come up, those players would be banned immediately, and it just was never that big of a deal. There's only one sort of notable event regarding hackers that I can think of in basically prior to this year, and that was back in 2021. There was a hacker who created the account name and yet it moves to copy the active and helpful player and yet it moves, who is not a hacker, but he copied the same account name and then got up rank 1 on ladder, one-shotting a bunch of players with a Hummer deck, and a lot of people were like, oh, and yet it moves is suddenly cheating, that's surprising. Well, it turns out he wasn't cheating, it was just somebody else. The cheater got banned. Of course, the and yet it moves that we all know and love was not banned, and that was, like, 4 years ago. That's really the only incident that I'm aware of cheaters prior to this point. So this does sort of raise, I think, a fairly valid criticism of if this cheat has been in the game for, 5-6 years, why has 1939 never fixed it up until this point? And I think that's a valid criticism to raise, but I think that it's important to point out that 1939 is a very small team, and it takes a lot of man-hours to dedicate to solving an issue like this, and there just really was not any issue with cheaters at a particularly large scale prior to the last month or two. So it just probably wasn't deemed worth the man hours to fix up until now. And, we have a lot of cool stuff. Like, we have a lot new expansions. We have new modes like the tournament modes. That's really fun. We have Cards on mobile came out, and, that's been great. And, all of that could have been delayed substantially if they went and solved this non-issue 5 years ago. But, they are solving it now, and that's sort of what's important. Now, next, I want to talk about cheats that you can't report. And this is where I need to be the most careful. I'm trying to bring these up purely just to be comprehensive and accurate. And this is just sort of, I'm doing this out of a sense of interest. But it is very important to know that there are 0 ways for you, the player, to detect if your opponent is doing this. So don't try to report them for anything that I'm about to talk about, because there is 0 way for you to know. If you send a report and saying they are doing one of these things, it is entirely speculative. And, they might be doing it, they might not be doing it, but that is going to flood, if you do that, it's going to flood the reporting system, it's going to flood sort of the queue of player reports and the help tickets, and it's going to slow down the processing of real cheaters. So, again, please, if you're going to listen to this section, do not try reporting people for what I'm about to talk about. So, also important, 1939 can tell if these people are cheating or not, and it's going to show up on 1939's detection. So again, 1939 does not need you to report these things. It's not going to help because, again, you can't tell if they are doing it. So, what are these cheats that you can't tell if they are doing it or not? Well, the first of these is the forced desync cheat, or the forced disconnect cheat. So essentially, it is very self-explanatory. Your opponent will force you to disconnect or desync from the game. So let's quickly talk about what disconnecting and desyncing means. So, this happens all the time. If you've played any amount of Cards, you have probably experienced a disconnect, and that one's very straightforward. The game tells you, hey, you have disconnected, or you might have experienced a desync, and this one, there's a slightly new pop-up that says, hey, you've desynced from the servers. Previously, it didn't tell you if you desynced, which was really annoying. Now it does tell you if you've desynced, but that's not 100%. But, sometimes your internet craps the bed and it causes that to happen. Sometimes your opponent's internet craps the bed and your connection to them starts to falter. Sometimes the servers are just overloaded because there's too many players logged on at a given time, or there's some server maintenance stuff going on. There's like 1,001 different reasons why you might get a completely normal disconnected desync. It happens all the time, and 99.99% of disconnects and desyncs are nobody cheating. It is just the game. And that is very important to mention because this happens all the time. You will disconnect or desync far more often than you will ever queue into an actual cheater. However, with all that being said, there is a cheat that can force your opponent to disconnect or desync from the game, and that will give you a fairly meaningful advantage in the game, because when you disconnect or desync, you might lose a couple turns, or it might stop you from being able to kill your opponent's units because you've become desynced with the server. And, it's... Desyncs can also just be very, very random things. Like, desyncs can create just very weird situations because, again, your game is desynced from what the server is saying, which is desynced with what your opponent is saying. So you have weird stuff like your both players have units in the front line at the same time, or there's unkillable units, or there's invisible units that are killing you, or sometimes you don't gain your credit slot at the start of your turn, sometimes you don't draw the card at the start of your turn. Desyncs just do very, very random stuff. It leads to just very silly and weird outcomes. But again, do not report because you disconnected. That is not a reportable offense. Do not try it. Do not spam 1939. You will just make everything worse if you start reporting every time you desync. And again, I know I'm repeating this a lot, but it really bears mentioning. Do not do this. Now, the second cheat that you can never be sure if they are using is there is a cheat that lets you move the camera and see your opponent's hand. So basically, it just gives you intel on your opponent's entire hand at any stage of the game, and now it doesn't give you the actual mechanic of intel, but it just lets you see what cards are in your opponent's hand. Now again, this is a very, very complicated cheat, and I have just seen videos saying, hey, this exists and it's something you can do. I have never seen anybody actually do this, but again, there is zero way to tell if somebody would do this to you, but anybody who is going to spend that much effort and time to cheat is probably just going to use the one-shot HQ cheat, because again, it doesn't show what cards are on the top of your deck. They're not going to know what you're going to top deck, and there's only so much use you can get out of knowing your opponent's hand because you don't know how they're going to play it and stuff like that. But again, very, very important. Odds are your opponent can't see your hand. This comes up a lot with new players because a lot of new players will sometimes bring up, hey, my opponent is cheating because I have a board clear, and they stopped playing units as soon as I drew my board clear. Well, it might not be that they stopped drawing units as soon as you drew your board clear. It might just be that you drew your board clear on turn 5, 6, or 7 as Britain, and your opponent knows that Carpet Bomb is a card in the game and says, I'm against Britain going up into 6 or 7 credits, I should stop playing units because they might have Carpet Bomb. That comes up a lot. The one that comes up the most is probably with countermeasures, because a lot of new players see countermeasures and they don't know all of the countermeasures, so when they play against countermeasures, they will walk into them because they don't know how to test for them, they don't know the proper order of operations, the flow chart to best understand how to play around countermeasures. So if they play a deck with countermeasures and their opponent starts playing perfectly to avoid the sort of worst case outcome from triggering a countermeasure, like if you hold up a missing and then they move their smallest unit to the front line before their biggest unit to the front line, it's not because they can see your hand, it's not because they know you have missing up, it's because they have played the game enough that they are experienced enough to know that there's a chance you have missing and it is correct for them to move the smaller thing up first. So, again, if you think your opponent seems to understand your hand, it's probably just that they have a better understanding of the game than you. And I know this kind of sounds like I'm just saying skill issue, but to be completely honest, it is really just kind of a skill issue. So if you think your opponent can seize your hand, like if your opponent is playing around a card that you have or not playing around a card you don't have, that one comes up a lot. That one's probably just because they're either taking a calculated risk or because they are bad at the game. But again, it's not because they're cheating. It is either because they are misplaying or they are playing correctly in a very good way. But either way, it's an opportunity to reflect on why they might be doing the things that they are doing and how you can apply that to your own game and improve your own game. You should not take this as an opportunity to baselessly report your opponent for a cheat. But again, this is something that is technically possible, and I bring it up because it is interesting and informative, but do not report people for this. With that all being said, these are all of the cheats that I have experienced myself, or I have seen people talk about, I have seen people report, I have seen content on, people cheating in these ways. That does not mean that this is a comprehensive list of all of the cheats that there are in the game, because one, there is new cheats being created or discovered on a semi-regular basis, it seems, at the moment. So it's also possible that I've just missed something. I'm not, again, not particularly big in the hacker community, so I don't know 100% of everything that's out there, but certainly this is the most common things are the infinite credits and the infinite damage, a one-shot HQ cheat. These are the ones that are just sort of the most common because they're the ones that win you the game the fastest, and if you're cheating, it's because you're trying to win the game. But again, if you see something that I didn't mention here today, but you can't explain, feel free to ask somebody in any part of the Cards community, hey, my opponent did this. Is this a cheat, or is there something I don't understand? Or if you're very, very convinced that it is a cheat, but I didn't mention today, you can send a report, and 1939 will look into it. Maybe it's a cheat, maybe it's not. They will inform you. But again, please don't spam the reports. I cannot understate that enough. I want to very much emphasize if they are cheating, report them. If you think they might be cheating, they're probably not cheating. It's usually very obvious when your opponent is cheating. There's a few other behaviors that I think are worth talking about for stuff that will get your account banned that is not directly related to either hacking the game or using an exploit. And the one that I'm going to bring up in this video is relatively straightforward, and that is botting. So botting is essentially when you set up a program that is going to automatically queue games for you. It's going to run cards, it's going to queue games, and it's either going to surrender immediately or go AFK until your opponent kills you. Or sometimes, if it's a more sophisticated bot, it might play out like a one card every turn by just simply doing like a hand drag from the middle of your hand onto the board end turn to sort of fake simulate a real player being there. And the reason people do this is because it gains them very marginal amounts of nation XP without them actually having to play the game. So in the mind of the botter, they are doing this because, hey, I don't want to play the game, but I do want to get my nice shiny rewards. I'm going to do this. Don't bot. It's going to get you banned. It's very, very easy to detect botters. Now, there has been a huge botting issue in the past where I was frequently queuing into people who were almost certainly botting. I have not seen that nearly as much anymore. Maybe it's just because the botters are all at the very low ends of the rank, but don't bot. And if you queue into somebody who you suspect might be botting, you feel free to report them. But again, somebody disconnecting doesn't inherently mean they're botting. Sometimes people just queue and go AFK, sometimes they disconnect from the game, stuff like that. But if you have reason to think your opponent might be botting, feel free to report them. And the reason that I know, I know quite personally that 1939 has a very good automatic detection for botting, and that's because of myself and a few other players were nearly banned by mistake by this automatic botting detection. And this was when myself and some other players, we were doing cards speedrunning, and I'm not going to get into that whole topic. That is a topic for another video someday, maybe, if people are interested in it. But the too long didn't read of cards speedrunning is you were trying to beat the trading AI as quickly as possible, and what that means is you queue up a lot of games and surrender a lot of games if you get a bad mulligan because you were trying to kill them on turn 3 or 4, and that requires a very specific hand. So essentially we were all queuing into the AI over and over and over and surrendering games en masse, and we had hundreds of turn 1 surrenders against the AI, which obviously triggered the botted response, but they looked into it and were like, hey, why are you guys doing this? And we explained the speedrunning, and that's a very funny story. And the moral of the story is, don't bot, you're gonna get banned, and if you get banned, then you don't get any of the rewards that you wanted and why you bought it in the first place. So if you want to get rewards, just play the game. It's fun, and if you don't have fun playing the game, don't play the game. Pretty straightforward. Now, finally, there is an entirely separate topic of competitive fair play violations and EULA breaches surrounding the qualification to esports tournaments, as well as breaking tournament rules inside tournaments. I originally intended this video to go on much, much longer and to go into great detail surrounding this topic. However, I decided that this would run the risk of conflating these issues and conflating tournament rules violations or sort of the minor EULA breaches with hacking. These are two very, very different issues. Hacking is much, much worse, and I did not want to conflate these two topics whatsoever, so instead I'm going to work on a separate video covering the entire timeline of cheating, rule breaking, and other controversies in Cards esports that will explore all of the different cases and what makes them unique, and as well as I will be giving all of the players involved a chance to speak about their experiences. So look forward to that in the coming weeks. It's going to be probably the not not the longest video I've ever made, but definitely the video that I have put the most amount of work into when it finally gets made. So, I hope y'all are excited for that. And that brings us to the end of the video. So I think I've covered everything there is really to say about hacking in Cards, but let me know in the comments if you think I missed anything, or if you have any other questions regarding hacking or the reporting process. I can either answer that for you or direct you to the relevant 1939 employee who can help you with that. And I will also let you know now that because there is a lot of controversy and misinformation and just misunderstandings surrounding the topic of cheating in Cards right now, especially, I'm going to be moderating the comments much more heavily than I normally do on my videos. So if you see a comment is deleted or your comment gets deleted, it is for that reason. Don't try to fight it. Don't try to post the comment again. You're just going to get deleted again, and if I have to delete your comments twice, I'll probably just ban you. But with all that being said, don't cheat yourself. If you find someone else who's cheating, report them, and I will catch all of y'all in the next one.